Update: my soon-to-be ex-husband humiliated me on our wedding day and met his karma instantly. Original post. It has been 2 days since my wedding day. I had already been with him for 4 years, 1 year of which I was engaged. It all started a few months earlier when I noticed my husband Jake watching prank videos. Among other things, these videos showed embarrassing photos of the bride being played on a projector in front of the whole room, or the bride's face being smashed into the cake. I told him straight away that I didn't want anything like that at our wedding. He just laughed and said that he wasn't planning anything like that. I thought that was the end of it, but I kept catching him making strange arrangements with his friends. He suddenly wanted to choose the wedding photographer and the cake. I thought nothing of it and was just glad that he was helping me with the wedding preparations. Nevertheless, I reminded him the day before that if he did anything like that, I would break up with him immediately. When the day of the wedding came, everything went smoothly until the ceremony, until the moment came when the cake was to be cut. The whole room watched as I made the first cut, and the photographer stood in front of us with the camera in hand. Suddenly, I felt a hand on the back of my head pushing my face first into the cake. Not only my makeup, but my whole wedding dress was ruined, and the whole room laughed. My husband the loudest. At that moment, the photographer took the photo, and Jake said that this was now our wedding photo. I turned around, slapped him in the face, and ran out of the room in tears. Thank goodness karma didn't take long to arrive, and it came in the form of his own brother. I ran to the toilet and started crying when I suddenly heard loud shouting from the hall. It was his brother Frank. I could barely understand what he was saying, and when I left the toilet, he was waiting for me. He told me that Jake had something to tell me. Jake was shaking and apologized without looking me in the eye. Frank told him to look me in the eye and apologize again. I was a bit scared of Frank at the moment because I always thought of him as a kind and gentle man. I'd never seen him angry before. Jake apologized again, and then Frank led us back into the hall, which was suddenly very quiet, and most of our families looked down at the floor and a little embarrassed. The festivities were cut short, and I was taken home by Frank because I was too angry with my husband, and I didn't want to see him. During the ride, Frank apologized for blowing up like that. He explained that my husband was horrible even back when he was a brother and used every special occasion to humiliate Frank. When it was Frank's birthday, my husband would throw his cake at him and break his presents, but back then, their parents always brushed it off, saying that it's just how brothers behave. So he had to endure every humiliation. But when he saw my husband bury my face in the cake, he was fed up because he realized that my husband was just a bad person who got his satisfaction from humiliating others. I asked Frank if he thought it would be an exaggeration if I separated from my husband, and he said no, because according to him, I deserved better, and he didn't care how his brother felt about it because he had brought it on himself. Then he told me that if I needed help collecting my things, he would help me and gave me his number. And I decided to separate from him and file for divorce and inform my family about it. Jake just told me not to do that because it was just a harmless prank. I was spammed by both his family and mine that it would be ridiculous to end our marriage over this. But I see it differently. If he does something like this to me despite multiple requests not to do it, even after promising he wouldn't do it, then I can't trust him, no matter what he promises me. I have to assume that the opposite can and will happen, and that he doesn't care at how I feel about his decisions. This situation can be projected onto so many worse situations where it would be important for me to be able to trust him. His brother Frank seems to be the only person who supports me now, and I will go through with the divorce. Call me humorless, call me what you want, but I have given my reasons. Now for the comments before reading the update. OP, I'm so sorry that this happened, but so proud of you. You warned him multiple times, and he felt it was more important to get laughs than be a trustworthy partner. I don't know why people think humiliation is a prank. If you have to explain that it was a joke, it's not funny. Best of luck. P.S. Please let Frank know he's a good man, and we appreciate him having your back. You're absolutely doing the right thing. Your soon-to-be ex has spent his whole life bullying his brother and figured once you were married, he had you locked in as his next victim. He is guaranteed to be this way forever, so don't listen to anyone who claims that it's just one prank, because it's not. OP, you have a ton of strangers telling you you're right and deserve better. You do deserve to be loved and respected, and it looks like your soon-to-be ex doesn't give you either. Also, you might try for an annulment, stating your husband lied to you and essentially disrespected you instead of keeping all those promises you make when you get married. This will be the best option if you're religious, because most of them don't marry divorcees. Feel better, sending you strength and prayers. Now for the update. Many of you asked for an update, so here it is. Read the original post if you haven't already done so. Many of you pointed out that I could get an annulment. Don't ask me why I didn't think of this earlier, but after you guys pointed it out, I planned on doing that. Haven't done it yet, but it will happen in the next few weeks. It will probably be much easier than a divorce. With that being said, what happened now? So a day after I wrote the original post, I went to Jake's apartment to get my stuff. I slept over at my best friend's house in the meanwhile. Of course, I also took up Frank's offer to help get my stuff. When we arrived there, he pleaded with me it was just a prank and he didn't mean to hurt me. But the only thing that I could think about was how he broke my trust before and how I couldn't trust him now if he told me he didn't mean to hurt me. When he saw Frank, his face turned red and he yelled at Frank and accused him of poisoning me against him. Don't worry, Jake, you did this yourself. He argued with Frank for a while, and Frank confronted him with everything he did to him during his childhood. He told Frank to grow a pair and that he should forget about what happened back then. Ironically, when he's the one who never changed and is just as bad as before. He constantly tried to talk to me, but Frank stood in his way and talked over him, and when we left, I saw how he angrily smashed the door. Apparently, he now lies to his family that Frank tried to steal me from him. Luckily, I was able to see who he really was before it was too late. What a coincidence that after this incident, my family spammed me with messages as well about how we should talk to a therapist instead of breaking up over this. They only stopped when I threatened to cut them off too. I also didn't plan to share this with you, but so many people suggested it that I thought I could at least ask him, so after we got my stuff, I asked Frank out, but he rejected me, telling me that he's already dating someone else. I just wanted to tell you this so that you can stop asking. But honestly, I'm also kind of glad this was his answer, because it means he didn't just help me because there was a malicious intent behind it, but more because he is simply a good person. Regardless, I told him about my post here, and Frank told me he read many of your comments. He said he liked your comments and that you made his day. I thought you might want to know this. This is probably the first and last update of this. I just wanted to get this behind me and look forward to it. But thank you all for your support. Edit, if you want to call my story fake because I asked Frank out, feel free. I just acted on what many of you asked me to do, and I thought to myself that asking him once doesn't hurt anyone and maybe lead to a much healthier relationship if he said yes. I am not in the best state of mind and will now leave this account, so don't be surprised if I don't respond anymore. My story will stay here and hopefully raise awareness for many people who are in similar situations with toxic partners. No matter if they're male or female, I wish you all the best. Story 2. I didn't like my bridesmaid makeup, and the bride said something that stuck with me. I was my older cousin's bridesmaid almost a year ago, and I flew out there to be there for her. We only see each other every couple of years because of the distance, so we're not that close, but we're the closest thing each other has to a sister. During my visit, we were talking about makeup, and I told her that one of my secrets is that I use lipstick as eyeshadow primer. I just put some around my eyes and smudge it around, and it holds my eyeshadow well and makes it more saturated. It's a little embarrassing to admit since I don't see anyone else do it, and I don't know how bad it is to do, but it works for me. My cousin had a pretty neutral reaction along the lines of, "It is what it is." She paid to have my makeup done professionally for the wedding. I showed the makeup artist a picture of the kind of eye makeup I wanted. It looked like a more well-done version of my usual makeup, and my cousin approved of it when I showed her. When the professional finished my makeup, I hated it. I genuinely couldn't recognize myself. The eye makeup was nothing close to what I asked for. There wasn't even a hint of the pink eyeshadow in the picture I showed her. I genuinely looked like the girl with the antennas from Guardians of the Galaxy. Somehow she managed to make my eyes look huge in the strangest, most alien way possible. My cousin could tell something was off by my reaction, so I told her how uncomfortable I was and how much I didn't like it. She insisted that I looked great and that I had nothing to worry about. I even went outside to see how it looked in natural lighting, and I still felt like an alien. When I came back in, I really wanted to touch it up with my own makeup. I forget what exactly happened at this point, if I asked her for permission to add my own makeup, or if she caught me trying to add my own, or if she just saw me pulling out my own makeup bag, but I'll never forget the look in her eyes and the darkened tone of her voice when she said to me, "I didn't pay for your makeup to be professionally done just for you to smear lipstick all over your face." I was so terrified and saddened, I almost cried. The way she brought up specifically how I used lipstick on myself just made it feel like such a personal attack, like I was filth for using such a method. I know it sounds overdramatic, but I was pretty much going through the same feelings you would go through if you had a bad haircut. It's pretty superficial and haircuts last longer, but at this point, I was pretty much told I wasn't allowed to do anything about my face for the rest of the day. It was my cousin's day after all, not mine, so I did my best to suck it up while absolutely dreading it on the inside. I was able to get used to it as the day went on and I had less time to look at myself, but months later, my cousin's words still stuck with me. Like, man, I was already mildly embarrassed about my methods. Why did she have to call me out like that when I was already feeling bad? It hasn't affected me enough to stop using lipstick as eyeshadow primer, but I just remember her words occasionally and feel judged. It wouldn't be the first time she's invalidated my feelings, but that's another story for another day. Now for the comments. One thing I genuinely do believe is that makeup has no rules. You can use your lipstick as a primer, you blush as a lipstick, concealer as an eyeshadow, whatever works for you as long as it doesn't harm your skin. People come up with new techniques every day. There really is no reason for you to feel ashamed. Your cousin just said it to piss you off because she was mad. Rock your eye lipstick, girl. I use lipstick as blusher. It spreads better and looks good with a good bronzer. I like to up a little bit in the nose because I like to look like Little Red Riding Hood. I know of people that use brown lip pencils like eyeliners, bronzer as eyeshadow, and these people are professional MUAs. Use the tools you have like you feel better. Rules are to be broken. She was caught up in her own day, her own makeup, her own dress, and just wanted everything to come together perfectly while making the biggest commitment of her life. Don't read too much into it. Every time I think I'm weird and I find myself hiding parts of me from others, I just Google whatever I'm insecure about and bam, you are no longer weird or alone. Everything that can be done has been done. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for the way that I punished my son for what he said about his friend? Plus update. Post. I, 36 male, have a son, 15 male, and a daughter, 17 female. And they've been with friends with their neighbor, who I'll call Ron, 17 male, since childhood. Recently, my daughter and Ron were hanging out with a friend, and they walked into her house as they left their friend's place. This is where the problem occurred. My son, who was at home with me, let out a big sigh after seeing Ron and asked why he was here. I was confused by what he meant. That's when my son vented about being tired of Ron's constant presence and made hurtful comments about his sexuality. Ron is gay. It was shocking because my son has never expressed any issues with the neighbor before and had always been close to him. Ron was visibly hurt and offered to leave, but I insisted he stay, but he said it was okay and left anyway. My daughter and I were rightfully upset, and I admit we were yelling. I asked what his problem was. He yelled back saying he couldn't help not wanting to be around Ron all the time. I tried being calm, asking my son why he would say something like that to Ron. At this point, my daughter had already left and went with Ron. My son refused to answer me and just kept saying he was sorry. I told him I'm not the one that you should be saying sorry to. I told him I raised him better than this, and this made him cry. In the heat of the moment, I made the decision to ground my son. I took away his phone, PS5, and all of his electronics, leaving him with only the TV in his room without the remote. He started crying even more and begged me not to go through with it, but I stood firm, telling him he needed to apologize to Ron the next morning. Now I'm conflicted. My daughter supports my decision, but when I spoke to Ron, he suggested I let it go, assuring me he would be okay. I think he might be right. I tried talking to my son again, but he is straight up refusing to talk to me and keeps saying, please leave him alone, in a quiet tone. I don't think I'm wrong for grounding my son, but I'm wondering if I went too far. Considering it's his first time saying something like this. Am I the a-hole for the way that I grounded him? Now for the update. Hello everyone, I wanted to provide an update on the situation regarding my son. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for your insights and advice. It's been a challenging time, but I'm happy to share that my son has finally opened up to talk to me. After I grounded my son, he still refused to talk to me until a couple of days ago. On Wednesday, he told me that he wanted to talk to me. I was so happy that my son has finally opened up to talk to me. Anyway, long story short, my son told me that he has feelings for Ron, and when he told Ron that he liked him, Ron rejected him and told him that he viewed him more as a little brother instead. This honestly shocked me because I didn't think my son was gay, so I guess some of you were right. My son started crying and asked me if I still loved him, and this broke my heart. I told him that I love him regardless, but he has to understand that his actions were wrong and he can't just be hateful towards Ron just because he rejected him. We then had a heart-to-heart conversation about love, rejection, and respecting others' feelings. After our conversation, he told me that he didn't mean what he said, but he just wanted Ron to leave as he didn't want to see him. I then told my son that he should apologize to Ron, but he said that he doesn't want to see Ron right now because he feels it would be awkward. I decided not to force my son to apologize to Ron directly, understanding that forced apologies might lack sincerity. Instead, I encouraged him to reflect on his actions and, when he's ready, express his remorse in his own way and on his own time. Trying to be understanding, I decided to return his TV remote and PS5. However, his phone remains confiscated as a reminder to him that the way he behaved was not acceptable. Ron and my daughter have distanced themselves from hanging out around our house. If I'm being honest, I'm positive Ron knew what this was about because he was adamant about not punishing my son for what he said. I do admire Ron because of his maturity and his kindness. Now my daughter is now upset with me for being lenient. She said that I'm actively supporting his homophobic behavior. I told her that I had a heart-to-heart conversation with her brother and that he understands what he did was wrong, but she is still upset. My son didn't want to come out to his sister yet, so I didn't feel comfortable telling her what the conversation was about. Anyway, I'm glad my son was finally open with me about how he's feeling, and I'm glad that we were able to finally talk, but I'm sad that my daughter is upset with me, so now I have to work out a way to fix my relationship with her. However, I do think this will blow over once my son is finally ready to come out to his sister, and I'm hoping she'd be understanding on why I decided to be a little lenient with his punishment. Story 4. Am I the a-hole for canceling our anniversary trip because my husband drowned my terrarium? I, 29 female, traveled across the country to visit a company regarding an incredible job offer. I spent 2 days touring the company to decide if it would be the right fit for me after years of self-employment. After meeting with the company, I visited with my sister, 32 female, and her family a few towns over. We barely get to see each other because of work and distance, so it was wonderful to spend a few days with her, the family, and her new baby. I was gone for a total of 8 days. When I returned home, I was excited to spend time with my husband, 33 male, and tell him about the trip, my visit with my sister, and my impression of the city, etc. We were meant to be celebrating our anniversary and decided to put off the discussion about whether or not I should accept the job offer until after our anniversary getaway. I'd arranged for us to go on a luxury train ride because he's a big train enthusiast, and we were meant to leave for the trip 3 days after I got home. This is when the problem started. I have a very large closed bioactive terrarium which I made with my mother 15 years ago. It's one of my favorite things that I have from her before she passed away. This terrarium is my pride and joy, and has come with me everywhere since we planted it. It was always super healthy and beautiful, and I've only ever had to open it 4 times to do a little maintenance and watering. My husband knows all of this, which is why I don't understand why he decided to tamper with it in my absence. I didn't notice the night that I got home because I was exhausted, but the next morning I went to check on the terrarium to find it in a terrible state. The roots were rotting and the plants were dying and molding. He told me that the day that I left, he poured a few cups of water into the vessel and sealed it again. I was so mad I cried, and it turned into a huge argument because it's just a plant, and all you do is look at it anyway. He called me ungrateful and overdramatic, and that I should appreciate that his intention was to help me and that he didn't ask because he didn't want to bother me on my trip. I ended up canceling our anniversary plans partly because I was so upset that I didn't want to go, and partly because I wanted to try and salvage the plants, and that would require time. He hit the roof when I told him and is now sleeping in a separate room and refusing to speak to me because, according to him, I'm being petty and trying to destroy our marriage. Am I being oversensitive about my plants? My friends are pretty evenly split and have pointed out that he was just trying to be thoughtful, however misguided it was. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you.